What do you say about that? Okay, we are on 34A. We are 34A, A2. So the Gemara said on the bottom column, we said Sholosh Truas Never Rosh Hashana. We have 3 times. It says Truas and Rosh Hashana, Shabboson, Zichron Trua, Yom Trua, Vata Shofar Trua. We have the word Trua 3 times, and we have Shteit Tekiyos L'Cholachas Vachas. And we also have, we proved that there has to be 2 tekiyos, 2 blowings of a straight sound before each crying sound, right? So Me'ina Maiden, so we learned out there's Sholosh Truos, there's 3 breaking sounds, right? There's 3 sounds that we, and with each breaking sounds are preceded by a straight sound, and Sheish Tekiyos Never Shana, and the 6 straight sounds. Again, let's just recap that we said. There's Tekiya, to the Trua, or tu, whatever the Trua breaking sound is, followed by a Tekiya, right? By a straight sound, and that the Torah says you have to do 3 times. We spoke about the fact we're not sure which is the breaking sounds. We do a whole variety of breaking sounds, or tu, or a combo, right? That was not a break. Is that clear, Ralph? Right, exactly. So that's now the Gemara. The Gemara says, even though this is how we mentioned that this is what we do, but the question is this biblical? Is this biblical law that we have to blow 3 sets of with a tekiya, straight sound, breaking sound, and a straight sound, or is some of this rabbinic law, and just we use the verse as a and the rabbis, when they instituted it, they saw that the verse alludes to it, but the verse cannot teach us all 3. So that's going to be the Gemara's point right now. So the Gemara says that achas, the Gemara is like this. Shtayim, 2 of these breaking sounds are midivrei Torah, and 2 of them are divrei Torah. Even though the Torah stated the word trua 3 times, which represents a breaking sound, but we only could learn out 2 of these breaking sounds are biblical, but achas midivrei sofrim. And one of these breaking sounds, again, every breaking sound that you spoke last week, there's no crying sound by itself. It always has to be preceded with a straight sound and followed by a straight sound. But one of them is rabbinic law. And the Gemara says, and the rabbis, I think Rashi says, and the rabbis wanted to place a crying sound when we talk about kingship, by Malchios, but there's a special mitzvah to talk about God's kingship, special mitzvah to talk about remembrances, Zechronos, and a special mitzvah to talk about shofar. Therefore, the rabbis wanted they should have blowings by each of those. So therefore, they said, you know what, we're going to have, even though on a Torah level, you only have 2 sets of blowing, but we're going to have a set for each one of the kings, 1 set for the kingship, 1 set for the zechronos, and 1 set for the shofars, 1 set for remembrances, and 1 set for the shofars. So the Gemara says, and how do we know that? Shtayim midivrei Torah, v'achas midivrei sofrim, and one of them are from the rabbinic law. The Gemara now elaborates. Shabbaton, Zichron Trua, those 2 verses that say Shabbaton, Zichron Trua, v'avarta shofar Trua, that would be sources divrei Torah. Those are 2 verses that tell us you have to say crying sounds, and therefore you need 2 crying sounds. And like we said, 2 crying sounds preceded by a straight sound and followed by a straight sound. And But the third verse, Yom Tu Yilachem, that third verse is not coming to tell us a third crying sound, rather the Talmud Huba. We needed to tell us the Gzeira Shava, to tell us, you remember the Gemara said, how do we know that you have to blow a tekiah before the crying sound and a tekiah following the crying sound? And the Gemara said, we learned that from the desert. In the desert, in the Midbar, when the Jews traveled, or when the Jews were gathered together, we saw, or let's say when the Jews traveled, the Torah says that you have to go ahead and blow. We learned out when they traveled, they blew a straight sound before they traveled. First, they blew a straight sound, crying sound, and a straight sound. So we learned from there the same way over there, the breaking sound had to be preceded with a straight sound and followed by a straight sound, preceded by a tekiah and followed by a tekiah. That teaches us that by Rosh Hashana, see, the Torah says by Rosh Hashana, it's a day of truah, breaking sound. It didn't tell us you have to do a straight sound. How do we know that? We know that from the desert. We know that from what they did in the desert. So therefore, that truah, that third breaking sound verse was coming not for itself to teach you have to do another set of breaking sound. Rather, it's coming to tell us that you need to have a sound before and a sound after. And how do we know that? Because it says the word truah here, and it says the word truah by the desert, and the same word, by using the same word in both places, it was coming to teach us this law. Okay. But it's alluded to now, but the need to blow a third time, a third set, there's no biblical need to blow a third set according to this opinion. You only have a rabbinic need, but you could say it's alluded to in the Torah because the Torah says the word truah. The Torah says the word truah, so therefore it's alluded to in the Torah. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Rabbi.
Okay, just to bring Mark up to date, we had a lot of different opinions in the Gemara of how do we get to the fact that we blow on Rosh. We have three sets of blowings that need to blow on Rosh Hashanah. We have to do a set of tekiah, a straight sound, followed by a crying sound, a breaking sound, followed by a straight sound. That has to be repeated 3 times. And the Gemara now is discussing whether that responsibility, welcome back, Adam, whether that responsibility is biblical or some of that rabbinic. That's the question. Adam, you hear the question. The question is, right, the 3 sets that we have to blow on Rosh Hashanah, was all 3 sets a biblical obligation? Or maybe you only have an obligation to do 2 sets. A straight sound, breaking sound, straight sound, breaking sound, straight sound. One Adam. Or all 3 of biblical requirement. Now, the Gemara earlier started off with saying that they're all 3 sets are biblical. So we're going to have, by the way, we're going to have 3 different opinions in the Gemara, whether all 3 sets are biblical. One opinion says all 3 sets, straight, breaking sound, and straight sound, repeated 3 times is biblical. One opinion says only twice is biblical, and the 3rd time is rabbinic. And the 3rd opinion says only 1 set is biblical, and the other 2 sets are rabbinic. That's just going to be what the Gemara is going to do for us now. Here comes the 3rd opinion. The Gemara says, Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani Omar. Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani says, we're now on 34A2. Adam, if you want to send to the group, Adam's ahead of the game. On 34A2, on the right side of the page, the right column, second column, right side, or about 6 lines from the top or so. Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar, he says in the name of Rabbi Yonatan, he says, Achad Midivrei Torah. The whole Torah obligation of Rosh Hashanah is to blow the following: a straight sound, a crying sound, which the question is, what is that crying sound? Like we said, there's a whole discussion. But the Torah's responsibility is a straight sound, crying sound, and a straight sound. And that's it. You fulfilled your biblical obligation. That is, but the rabbinic obligation is to repeat that 3 times. Why? Meaning the rabbis add 2 more sets. Because, we said there is a special mitzvah, Rosh Hashanah, to talk about kingship, Malchiot, talk about Hashem being the king of the world on Rosh Hashanah. We talk about shofrot, we talk about the shofar, we have verses of the shofar, and we're supposed to talk about zichronot, different remembrances on Rosh Hashanah. So the rabbis wanted that we should have blowings for each one, for the kingship, when we talk about God's kingship, we talk about God's remembering us for good things, and talking about the shofrot. So therefore, they instituted that we should have blowings at each of those places. That's why in the Shemona Esrei, in Amidah, we have at different places that connect. We have shofar blowings connecting to those concepts of kingship, of zichronot, of remembrances, different verses that talk about God remembering things for the best, and also where in Tanakh it talks about shofar. Yes.
Is there a practical reason why we would want to know whether it's rabbinical or not?
Yes, very good. So Adam asked the question: what would be the practical difference? Whether it's biblical or rabbinic, you got to do it. But the practical difference sometimes is when you have a safek, when you have a question. When the rabbis say that when you have a question in a rabbinic law, the rabbi said a question in rabbinic law you could be lenient, right? Meaning if you're not sure if you said a bracha on the drink or not, so since saying a bracha on the drink is a rabbinic law, so you would not say that would be one of the reasons why you would not say the bracha if you're not sure. If you're not sure if you said birkat hamazon or not, you said after you had a nice meal and you were satiated, then you have to repeat that birkat hamazon. That could be one practical. There's a great Gemara. I always like to quote the Gemara. I haven't mentioned it recently in Brachot. The Gemara says in Brachot, the Mishnah says women are obligated in Birkat Hamazon, right? So when your wife washes on Shabbat, right, for bread, maybe that's the only time sometimes women wash because they're very conscientious, many of them. So but on Shabbat, when they wash, and they have an obligation to say Birkat Hamazon. They had bread, they have obligation. They had at least an ounce of bread. Obligation to say Birkat Hamazon. The Gemara has a question: is the obligation of women in Birkat Hamazon a biblical obligation or rabbinic obligation? That's the Gemara's question. The Gemara says an amazing question. What's the difference? Right? They got to do it. The Gemara says, you know what the difference will be? The difference will be that can a lady say Birkat Hamazon for a man? A lady cannot cover a man for something that if she's a lower level obligation. If she's equally obligated, good morning, Nathan. Good to see you. Welcome back. Yes, enjoy. So the question is a lady obligated in Birkat Hamazon min Torah or rabbinic? And the Gemara says the difference. Really, what's the difference? You got to do it. The Gemara says whether she could say Birkat Hamazon for a man. If she's obligated on a Torah level, technically she could say Birkat Hamazon for a man. If he ate and she ate, but if she's obligated rabbinically, she cannot say Birkat Hamazon for a man when he has a biblical obligation. But I think the attitude of the Gemara is teaching us what our attitude should be. The Gemara asked the question, "My nafka mina." What's the difference if she's obligated rabbinic or biblical? She got to do it. So there are differences. So now, just to bring Nathan up to date, we're talking about the blowing of the shofar, Rosh Hashanah. And by the way, everybody, we're talking about the date of December 5th for the Siyum. we want to talk more about it. December 5th is a Thursday. If anyone keep that date in mind, and we have to confirm it in the next, by the end of the week, we should try to confirm. I presume we'll be around 6:30 p.m. Yeah, so we'll talk more. If everyone could save that date on their calendar. So we're talking now about Rosh Hashanah, the blowings of Rosh Hashanah that we blow. The Gemara said we all know there are 3 sets of blowings that have to be done. Tekiah, straight sound, true or breaking sound, followed by a tekiah. That has to be done 3 times. And here the Gemara is discussing is that was doing it 3 times is a biblical law or rabbinic law? How many? I mean, we know there's at least one set is biblical, but are all 3 sets biblical? And that we said is a dispute in the Gemara whether all 3 sets are biblical or 2 sets are biblical or 1 set is biblical. So now we have Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani. He says, Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani says the name of Rav Yonatan. He says, Achat b'divrei Torah. Morning. Only 1 set. The only requirement min Torah is 1 set of a straight sound, a breaking sound, and a straight sound. That's it. You fulfilled your biblical obligation. If we would know what that breaking sound is, we would just do a straight sound, a breaking sound, and a straight sound, and then we're covered. We don't know. Some say we don't know which is the breaking sound. Therefore, we do all different types of. Therefore, we do the shvarim sound. We do the trua sound. We do the shvarim trua, the combination, because maybe that is the breaking. Because the Gemara says, what do you say, Adam? We do shvarim. That's we do 3. If you notice, we do 3. We do like tekiah, shvarim, tekiah, tekiah, shvarim, tekiah, tekiah, shvarim, tekiah. That's 3 of that. We do tekiah, trua, tekiah, tekiah, trua, tekiah. The tekiah straight, and then tekiah straight. Then we also do tekiah. We start off with tekiah, shvarim, trua, tekiah, tekiah, shvarim, trua, tekiah. Because the Gemara is going to ask you a question. Yes. Right. Exactly. No, we got to do each one 3 times. I mean, we got to do a set. I mean, the crying sound, whatever the right crying sound is, we have to do it at 3 times. A set. We gave the example of cream cheese. Cream cheese is a crying sound. We had the bread on top and the bread on bottom is it's a straight sound. It has to be covered with preceded with a piece of bread with the tekiah, followed by a tekiah. But that has to be repeated 3 times. Whatever that right trua is. No. So right. So now the Gemara is saying 3 times is because either it's biblical responsibility to do the repeated 3 times, or it's 2 of them are rabbinic, or 1 of them is rabbinic. That's what the Gemara. That's how we get 9. That's it, right? That's how we right exactly. We don't know what right. So the Gemara is going to explain. Right, we're going to get to what Ralph was saying in a minute. So now the Gemara now wants to understand. The Gemara understands the second opinion that says that 2 times is biblical, 2 sets are biblical, and 1 set is rabbinic. The Gemara said because we need we have the word trua 3 times, the Gemara says. The word trua is found 3 times. The Gemara says between Yom Kippur and Yom Kippur of Yovel, the 50th year where they blow the shofar, and the slaves, the Jewish slaves, go back home, the year of Jubilee. And the Gemara says we have the trua 3 times between Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. So we're working, and the Gemara says, and they all apply to each other. There's going to be 3 sets by Rosh Hashanah. Now, again, if you hold that, if you hold that the trua, we're going to use it for the blowings, that means there'll be 3 times you blow on Rosh Hashanah, 3 sets. But now the Gemara says the opinion that says no, we only could use 2 of the trua for the sets of the blowing, and the 3rd trua is not for the blowing sound. It's not going to teach us you have to do a set. Rather, by saying it's a day of trua, it's teaching you that you have to be preceded with a tekiah and followed by a tekiah. Why? Because how do you know? The Torah does not mention the word straight sound on Rosh Hashanah. The Torah does not mention the word Tekiyah on Rosh Hashanah. The Torah just says it's a day of Truah. Mark, you can take that bottom big Gemara if you don't mind. The Gemara just says it's a day of Truah. How do you know that the sound has to be preceded with a straight sound and followed by a straight sound, which is the Tekiyah sound, is that straight sound? Where is the source for that? So the Gemara, so one rabbi said that, you know what, I use it from the Midbar. In the desert, it said also that when the Jewish people traveled, it says it's a day, it says they would blow a truah. When they traveled, they would blow a truah, and then the first camp on the east would go ahead and travel, and then they would blow another truah, and the next camp would travel. And over there, it used the word to kadem truah. When the Jewish people were traveling, the Torah uses the word tekiyah. We're on 34a2. So what do you say? But not by Rosh Hashanah. Since there was no tekiyah mentioned Rosh Hashanah, we're going to take that tekiyah, Morning Morris, that's mentioned on, if you want this, it's right over there. The tekiyah that's mentioned by the Midbar, we're going to use it, apply it to Rosh Hashanah because of a concept called Gzeira Shaveh, because the Torah used the same word, and the purpose of this word, Truah, this third Truah, that the Torah says by Rosh Hashanah, they have to have this crying sound. The purpose was to tell us it's a day of crying sound, similar to the day of the crying sound when you go in and the Jewish people travel. And just like that crying sound was done preceded with a straight sound and followed by a straight sound, so too on Rosh Hashanah, it has to be preceded by a straight sound and followed by a straight sound. That's what the Gemara says. That's what the purpose of that third Truah is. It's not coming to tell us blow a third set of crying sounds. Rather, that Truah sound, this Truah, the word Truah over there, is coming to tell us, to teach us this law, to compare it, to learn it out from the desert, that you has to be preceded with a straight sound and followed by a straight sound, which we call preceded by a tekiyah and followed by a tekiyah. So in the desert, they did it with trumpets, and the Gemara is going to ask the question, what Asaf is alluding to, how do you compare the desert with the shofar, with the trumpets to here with the shofar? But we'll have to stay tuned for that. How the Gemara is going to explain that point. Yes.
There's
three times between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur of Yovel. It's true. 3 times.
And then the word Truah is also mentioned one more time.
It's meant by the desert. It's mentioned by the desert when they traveled. It says Truah, and it says Tekiyah connected with the Truah. This
third time
to link it to the Tekiyah. Exactly.
This sentence is linked to that Truah because there's nothing special about Yom Teruah Yelachem. He's saying that this sentence is linked to that idea in the wilderness. Why really? No, that idea. There's nothing like.
You see, you're saying why is
3 sentences? I'll say not the shofar Torah, right? And then it says,
right, the Gemara says, it says,
what is special about this?
Shabbaton zichron Truah, v'avarta shofar Truah. The Gemara says midivrei Torah. That pasuk of Shabbaton zichron Truah is referring to blowing the shofar. V'avarta shofar Truah, blowing the shofar. And Yom Teruah Yelachem. Okay, that's a good question. We have to why the Gemara picks. We have to analyze that. Why the Gemara picks this pasuk is connected to that. Okay, that we have to look at. But so the Gemara says, So but according to the other opinion, my Talmuda. Let's see it again. Shmuel Bar Nachmani, you got it on the right, 3482 on the right side, 5 lines from the top. You got it, Mark? 3482. What? Shmuel Bar Nachmani, he says, Rabbi Yonatan, in the name of Rabbi Yonatan, Achat Midivrei Torah. There's only one set of blowings that are biblical, with a straight sound, breaking sound, and a straight sound. And Shtayim, 2 sets are what? Midivrei Sofim, rabbinic. Va'avarta shofar truah, the verse of Shavarta shofar truah, that verse is Divrei Torah. And that will be the verse, it mentions the word shofar in this verse. So that's going to be the Torah teaching. And Shabbaton Zichron Truah and Yom Truah Yilachem, those 2 other verses, the Talmud Huba, is coming to teach us other laws regarding shofar, but not coming to teach us the responsibility of how many sets you have to do. Exactly. So the Gemara says, what are those 2 other teachings he's coming to tell us? What's the 2 other teachings? We only know of one other teaching, that you have to compare it to the desert to teach you that just like there it was preceded by a straight sound, followed by a straight sound, so too your set of breaking sound has to also be preceded and followed. But what is the second truah, extra truah, you're telling me using it for some other teaching? What other teaching are you using for? You haven't introduced it to us. So the Gemara says, bayom v'lo b'layla. Very important halakha. That the only time you could go ahead and blow the shofar, the mitzvah of shofar, is by day and not by night. Where do you get that from? So the pasuk says, it says Yom Truah Yeh Lachem. It says it's a day of Truah that should be for you, and in fact it says Yom Truah, the day. That means like we find by Lulav also, Lakachtem Lachem by Yom Harishon. The first day of the holiday, by day. The mitzvah Lulav is only by day. Brit Milah, by Yom Hashmini. Doesn't say B'Shmini, it says B'Shmini, 8th. By Yom means they emphasizing the day. The mitzvah of Brit Milah is only by, that's why they gotta make sure they don't get close to sunset when they do that circumcision, because you're getting it, you can't do it after sunset. That's sometimes if their baby's yellow, or sometimes they do in the afternoon. So, but they have to be careful. They have to make sure they get it. What'd you say? Especially in a day like today. So that's what the Gemara says. The Biyom, when it says Yom Truah Yeh Lachem, that's coming not to tell us it's a day of blowing the sound. It's not going to tell us another set. Rather, it's going to tell you, identify the time of the day that you have to blow.
Now, if Yom's going to be teaching the daytime, then it has to be the other one, which is which teaches you
something. Very good. Which pasuk is true? So now the Gemara says the idach, warning us. The other opinion that uses Yom Truah for Gzeira Shaveh. So how does he know? How does he know this law? The one who says there's 2 sets are biblical, 1 set is rabbinic, but how does he know B'Yom V'Layla Menale? How does he know this fact that it has to be done by day and not by night? If this verse is not available for this, because you're using this verse Yom Truah Yeh Lachem for something else, it's not coming to tell us day and not night. You have it teaching us something else. So how do you know, where is your source to say that you cannot blow the shofar at night? Meaning, nobody says you can blow the shofar at night. But where's your source? So the Gemara says, Naftale may be Yom HaKippurim. He says we learn it out from Yom Kippur, because the Yom Torah says by Yovel, when the Torah talks about shofar and truah, breaking sound, like it It's the same exact sound that we blow on Rosh Hashanah. When Yovel will apply, when Yovel will be back, the Jubilee year, they'll be blowing the same exact, it's going to be a repeat of what we do here in Rosh Hashanah. We already know how they're going to blow. And over there it says, Biyom. It says the Yom HaKippurim. It says the word Yom Kippurim. And that teaches us, since we have a Gzeira Shaveh, since we learn from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur of Yovel, it says Shvi'i, Shvi'i. It says over there, the 7th month, right? It says Yom Kippurim comes out on the 7th month. And it says also, Rosh Hashanah comes out also on the 7th month. And we say, we compare, and so just like Yom Kippur, it's on the daytime, the blowing of the shofar. So too, the blowing over here is also on. We're gonna say Shvi to tell us that you have to go ahead and do it just like over there. It's by daytime. Here also, it's by daytime. So the Gemara says, okay, you're going to learn it from Yom Kippur. So the Gemara says, Yom Kippurim Yolif, if we're learning out from Yom Kippur, so Nigma Nami Nine. So why don't we learn from Yom Kippur? You know, there's another Yom Kippur. The Gemara said, the Torah says, "V'havarta shofar trua." On Yom Kippur, it says you pass a shofar trua. And the Gemara, the first opinion said that v'havarta shofar trua means you pass a straight sound followed by a crying sound. That's how he interpreted on Yom Kippur of Yovel. The rabbi said, how do you know on the Jubilee year when they blew the shofar, how do you know it was preceded by a tekiah and followed by a tekiah? Because he used the word, the pasuk stated, "V'havarta," you shall pass the shofar. So he understood "V'havarta shofar," there should be a passing of a blow of a straight sound. So if you're learning from Yom Kippur, so the same way it says "V'havarta shofar truah," the same way by Yom Kippur it says, it seems to indicate a sound, a straight sound beforehand and a straight sound afterwards. So the Gemara says, "Nigma nami minei pshuta lefaneha upshuta lachareha." We should learn out that you have to do a straight sound before and a straight sound afterwards. And why did the rabbi said, I'm going to learn out, you know how I learn out, you do a straight sound before and a straight sound after by Rosh Hashanah? He learned that from the desert. But the desert, it says tekiah. It says when the Jews traveled, they blew a tekiah and they blew a truah. It said tekiah before truah and it said a tekiah after truah. So he says, and we're going to compare it to the desert. The Gemara says, because it says the word truah on Rosh Hashanah, it says the word truah by desert, the Gzeira Shaveh. Good morning, Rabbi. And therefore, because of that, the law applies, so we're going to have a tekiah before and a tekiah afterwards. And that's going to be his source. But if you're learning out from Yom Kippur, if this rabbi is also learning from Yom Kippur of Yovel, why does he have to come on to the source of the desert? You could just see it. You could see it from Yom Kippur because the pasuk says "V'havarta shofar truah," and "V'havarta shofar truah," we said meant that you have to do a passing sound, a straight sound first. Havarta, then comes the truah. So why doesn't he learn out from the fact that Yom Kippur it says that they would do a varta shofar truah? So the Gemara says this rabbi does not, he holds, I don't see in the words v'havarta that you will pass through a shofar truah, that word means tekiah. I mean, the rabbi earlier said that the word v'havarta shofar truah, you shall sound the shofar truah is the term vat alludes to a straight blast, something that passing through, straight blast. He doesn't see it that way. He doesn't see that the word vavarta indicates a straight blast. He rather learn out from a clear pasuk by the desert when the Jews traveled, where it says clearly kia. It says they did a straight sound and a crying sound and a straight sound. And I said last week on Friday that an idea that there's no such thing in the Torah of you don't start with the crying sound and you don't end with the crying sound. Even when the Torah tells us we have to do a crying sound, right? Let's say on Rosh Hashana, we have to do a crying sound. Or the Torah says in the desert, when you travel, you have to do a crying sound. You don't start with the cry, you don't end with the cry. There's always the idea of strength and bitachon and emunah. Even they always start with a straight sound. Straight is that's a strong sound. It's a very strong sound. The crying sound, but therefore, the Gemara says he does not learn from the word vahavarta. He doesn't see that word indicates the idea of tkiya, of a straight sound, and therefore that's why he comes on to he learns from the midbar, from the desert. So the Gemara says, Elamai darshibahu. What does he darshan from the word you shall pass the shofar tuah? Why does the Torah use such a language, vahavarta, shofar tuah? It could have said it could have said the word shofar, it's day of shofar. Shofar, what's the word vahavarta? What's the word? It should have just said shofar tuah. It should have said shofar tuah b'chodesh, shofar tuah on the 7th month. Why does he vahavarta? He tells us you can't turn the shofar upside down. Vahavarta is the way the shofar went naturally on the animal. The way it's on the animal, that's the way you got to blow it. But if you're going to take a shofar and you're going to turn it upside down, that's what the pasuk says. You can't do that. The way the ram walks, the way he goes with the shofar on its head, the way that is, when you blow the shofar, the wide side, you should be in the side that's attached to the head of the animal, and the top. The top is going to be, you're going to blow with the narrow side. If you're going to go ahead and blow with the wide side, or if you're going to go ahead and fill up the space and make the wide side narrow and widen the other side, that is not going to be good. You have to do it the way it goes naturally on the head of the animal. I want to wish everyone a beautiful day. We'll be a beautiful crowd. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you very much. All the best, everybody. Thank you. So a lot of details here. You know what's going on, how they got to